In this video, I'll be talking about my character research into the protagonists of the crime genre and how they can influence my storyline ideas. Hope you enjoy. Travis Bickle. Travis Bickle is a 26-year-old former US Marine who served in the Vietnam War. He lives in New York City and is extremely socially inept, and this could be down to his experiences in Vietnam, and he also had an honourable discharge in 1973 from the US Marines. He didn't have much of an education, which means he must take up a job full-time as a cab driver, working 12-hour shifts every day. He works in dangerous neighbourhoods in the city of New York, driving around pimps, addicts, thieves, and he doesn't hide his disgust of them, and he dreams about cleansing such filth. He is such a different character, with a personality disorder which could be due to the Vietnam War, which left many soldiers unable to forget the shocking thoughts about the loss in Vietnam. He becomes paranoid and starts acting out his vigilante fantasies after he is rejected by Betsy, an office worker for presidential candidate Charles Palantine. He is obsessed with saving Iris, who is a 12-year-old prostitute, and he does so by violently killing and injuring her clients, whilst also being hailed as a hero by the local newspaper for his efforts in saving Iris, and he's also praised by her parents for returning her. He is a hero, and a very unconventional hero, which is a change from his attempted assassination of Charles Palantine earlier before in the film. Travis is such a great character to research into, as he's so different, and you don't always have to have a hero who's extraordinary and is a superhero. It can be the lone vigilantes who are fighting for the freedom of everyone, like Travis does for Iris. He can be seen as an antagonist, but he's considered the hero at the end of the film, which makes him a protagonist, as he fights against evil villains in the most violent way possible. Lewis Bloom. Not much is known about Lewis Bloom, but he's a sociopathic, unrelentingly dedicated individual who's willing to do anything to achieve his goals, and as the job as a freelance video journalist is to make money out of crime videos and sell it to the news, he seems to be a very kind, charismatic individual who makes a living by selling scrap metal, until he is caught by a security guard, who then he assaults and robs, showing how he is different to what everyone expected him to be. He is rejected when he asks for a job, and he then witnesses a car accident as he's a cameraman shooed away. He then purchases a video camera and sets up his own company, Video Production News. He buys a police radio scanner so he can listen out to crimes that are taking place currently. He recruits Rick, who is his partner, although he's given a low share of the business. They spend their evenings filming crimes that take place and selling the footage to Nina, who works for a news company as an anchor, and also who he finds a connection with. They together make profit, upgrading to a Dodge Challenger and making even more profit, although Rick still earns a basic wage. Lou is a very different character to what we see at the start of the film. He isn't scared by the police who accuse him of murdering people, due to even though Lou was just tampering with the crime scene, it still shows how he is fearless, and also which isn't expected of a character like him, because he's so socially different, because he doesn't really connect with other people. Towards the end of the film, Lou and Rick find out who the true murderers are, and organise a shootout between the police and the murderers, which they can both film. In a twist of events, Lou films the whole scene, even when Rick is caught up and is killed. Lou stands there and watches, which shows how shallow he is, because a death on camera can generate a lot of money. Lou might not have been able to stop Rick's impending death, but filming Rick's dead body was cold and exactly what he needed. He is a character similar to Travis Bickle, socially inept and incapable of holding conversations and negative most of the time about himself and about others. Dan Gilroy, who directed this film, was inspired by Taxi Driver, and you can see this due to the similarities, even in the film posters. Lieutenant Vincent Hanna. Lieutenant Vincent Hanna is a police investigator for the LAPD who comes across the slick armed robber Neil McCauley and his crew of committed, experienced criminals. He learns of McCauley's plans to rob a large bank in Midtown LA, along with his infamous crew. He is involved in a huge gunfight and takes out some of McCauley's men in the process, but Neil still makes a swift escape. Vincent Hanna also has personal issues, which is a great side story to tell, which can influence the characters for my storyline. His stepdaughter is involved in a domestic situation, whilst he is hot on the heels of Neil McCauley. His wife allows him time to focus on Neil, as he is so dedicated to his job, and he leaves LA with the assistance of Nate, who eventually captures Neil, and they eventually kill. The reason why I chose this character is because he has personal issues, but is still dedicated to his job, and most protagonists are very dedicated to what they do, and also they're very driven individuals. He is also victorious, and he's shown as a hero for defeating the one man that has devastated the city and stole millions. He isn't the most disciplined investigator, as he has to obtain information from other criminals, but he gets the job done and does it effectively, and this is why I chose him, because he defeats Neil McCauley, who is near invincible to most people in the film, because he's so slick when it comes to robbing banks, and also killing other people, because he's so organised when it comes to heists and other things like that. And it's such a surprise that Lieutenant Vincent Hanna actually does kill him in the end, not to ruin it. Bruce Wayne. Bruce Wayne had to be on the list. Although he might be seen as a superhero, he has a rough past just like most of the men on the list, which makes him a perfect fit for the protagonist that will inspire my storyline. Bruce Wayne is the billionaire son of the late Thomas and Martha Wayne, and he's also the CEO of Wayne Enterprises. He's an extraordinary billionaire who's been affected by the death of his parents, and he lives his life as a split between Master Wayne and Batman, the lone crime-fighting vigilante. Raised in Gotham, where his parents owned Wayne Enterprises, which employed 170,000 people, his wealth is due to what was left over after he witnesses the tragic murder of his parents by the criminal Joe Hill, outside of a movie theatre at a very young age. He was put under custody of the family butler, Alfred Pennyworth, who raised Bruce, which was difficult as Bruce was enraged and traumatised by his parents' death. He took to crime fighting in his early 20s as a way of letting out his anger and frustration and avenging his parents. He protects Gotham City by becoming Batman, which was inspired by a bat flying through his study room, where he decided to create a frightening bat costume to intimidate the criminals that he fights against. Bruce Wayne is the perfect inspiration for a protagonist, outraged at his parents' death and his hunger to fight against criminals who threaten the city, like Bane and the Joker. He's a lone vigilante, which is what I like to use for my storyline because I can really focus on them in my trailer, as the trailer is the platform that lets your audience know who the characters are, what they're about and what they're fighting for or against, and in this case, Batman is fighting for the people of Gotham and fighting against all the antagonists like the Joker, Bane and all the other criminals like Joe Hill who murdered his parents.
That's detonation. It's out over the bay. It's clear of the city.
James Bond. James Bond is always one of the best protagonists for a film. His coolness, his desire for women, and his knack of prevailing against countless antagonists make him perfect inspiration for my crime film. Not much is known about his birth and all other details, as he is fictional to the point that he's been played by actors like Sean Connery, Pierce Brosnan, and Daniel Craig in different times and different eras. The Bond films that I've mainly watched have been the recent Daniel Craig interpretations, with films like Quantum of Solace, Casino Royale, Skyfall, and the up-and-coming Spectre. Bond is a character who is always falling in love with the evil criminal women who turn out to be his sidekick towards the end of the film. With the Aston Martins, the new gadgets and weaponry, the films keep getting better and better. For my storyline ideas, I could use a Bond-like character, someone who has a way with the ladies but somehow lets it distract him, but he still manages to win. He's the typical hero, and you can never count James Bond out of any situation. He's a one-man army and a brilliant protagonist to have, and takes inspiration from his lack of fear, pinpoint shooting and his habits of succeeding in the toughest missions, which can really help me for my storyline ideas, because I can really use a character like this because he's so different, and using a spy instead of the typical police detectives or just police officers like in my next Protagonist Research. I think this is really different because you'll know that he's a spy, but then you want to know a lot more about him. Brian Taylor and Mike Zavala are close friends and partners in the Los Angeles Police Department. Taylor is filming their police activities for a film project, attaching small cameras to his and Zavala's uniform and carrying around a camcorder, much to the dismay of their peers and superiors. They get involved into gang war between the Hispanics and the blacks, and you can tell how realistic the film is because they are close partners, and even though they both get along so well, you still get the small talk, and there is still silence, which really emphasises how realistic this film is, and it portrays two characters which are very realistic and normal, ordinary police officers, not detectives, and it really follows a realistic point of view, and especially as it's shot by camcorders and GoPros, you can really tell how realistic the film is. Now, they escape death every single day, but you can really see how dangerous it is to be a police officer, because you see Brian and Mike get caught up into a gang war between the blacks and the Hispanics, and then the Hispanics order out a hit on both of them. However, Brian survives even though Mike gets shot, and you can tell how sad they are because they've literally lost a brother or a lover, as some would say, because they're so close. And it's a heartbreaking film, and even though it's a crime film and it focuses on the police and they're meant to be badass as such, but these are just normal cops, and it's really heartbreaking when you see Brian Taylor lose his best friend in Mike Zavala. They're such a realistic pair, and you wouldn't tell that they were actors. You'd think that they were actual realistic characters or realistic people from actual the LAPD. And it's really well shot because the uniforms are so good and the props that they use are so good, and it's so realistic how they've used just random actors for the gangs as well. And you can really tell that they're heroes because they put their lives on the line each and every day, and they lose a friend because of it, and that friend was Mike Zavala. And you can really see how the funeral was also a portrayal of real life, because you always have a funeral after a police death, and it's very heartbreaking. I feel that all of these characters have influenced my 3 plot ideas already. I know how I could use these characters in my trailer, and I could already think of ways to make them seem realistic. If I can use my heroes as a way to tell the basic synopsis of what's happening in my trailer, then my trailer will be very successful. And if I could do this in a very realistic way and connect the audience to my characters, and it will understand what they're like in terms of personality and desire to defeat the criminals, then this will be perfect as my protagonist, or protagonists, will make my film seem appealing to a massive audience. I don't have to overdo action scenes. I can just show who the protagonists are and who the antagonists are. I think that using crime as the main sort of objective to defeat the criminals, I think is so good, because using the either police, spies, vigilantes, whatever it is, as long as they're defeating the criminals in the trailer, then I think it will appeal to most of the audience, because even though it might seem as if the criminals are winning, they want to go see the film to see what the actual ending is, and also if there's any plot twists. I hope you've enjoyed my research into protagonists from the crime genre, and make sure you watch my next video where I research into the antagonists of popular crime films and series. Thanks for watching.